Today we're doing two things. We're finishing up the new studio tour that I started in the last video, but this time focusing more on a desk tour of my editing station and monitors, and I'm also going to be answering some of your questions from the previous video. Let's get undone. Gerald Undone. He's crazy. What's happening, everybody? I'm Gerald Undone, and I'm sick of these dolphins.
Either they can't hear us or they don't understand.
So since I'm already over here, let's start with the two most frequently asked questions on the last video. The first one was about picture profiles. So on the Sony cameras, I'm using S-Log2 with S-Gamut, so basically picture profile 7. And then on the Blackmagic, I'm using the film gamut with B-Raw. And then I use this X-Rite color checker to equalize their white balances and give a color sample so that it's easier to match them in post. The second question was about the overhead shot and how the camera and mic are suspended. So this is just a C-stand with the arm coming out and extended up over the table, and at the end of the C-stand arm is a 3/8 inch thread for which I have a ball head attached to it. Now not this one, but a similar one, slightly larger though, and it's a cheaper one from Amazon. It's a newer, it was about $30 Canadian. I'll put a link to it in the description below, but it's not bad. It said it supported 10 kilos or 22 pounds, so I thought it should definitely work for the Sony a6600 with just a crop lens on it. And then the mic is attached using a small rig clamp, which then has a combination of friction arms attached to it. The first one is actually this discontinued product from Cinovate, which is actually a grip that I use for odd jobs like this, or sometimes for attaching to a camera that doesn't actually have a grip. Fortunately, you can't get these anymore though. But you could use any other magic arm that you had, as long as it was long enough to do the job, and you don't really have to worry so much about weight because the microphones are pretty light. So I think pretty much any magic arm combination would work there. All right, I hope that information helps. Now let's go take a look at the editing station. So first off, as I mentioned in the previous video, I'm using a motorized sit-stand desk from Autonomous. These things are crazy good for the price. They're only $300 to $400, but feel like a unit worth $1,200. I highly recommend them if you're looking for a good standing desk on a budget. Underneath the desk is my main rig. Now this is a custom-built machine with an Intel i7 8700K running close to 5 GHz with 32 gigs of 3000 MHz RAM and an NVIDIA GTX 1080. It's not the fastest rig you can build, but it does what I needed to quite well and didn't break the bank. On top of the desk we have a mouse and keyboard, obviously. This is the Cooler Master Keys MK750, which in my opinion is so close to being the perfect keyboard, but has one seriously annoying flaw, and that's key chattering with double and triple registers. I've had two different versions of this keyboard, and both will double type certain letters very early on in the life of its switches, but I've installed an app called Keyboard Chattering Fix that removes the chattering, so it kind of solves the problem. It lets me keep using this keyboard since I like it so much, but I wish I didn't need a software solution for it. The mouse is the Logitech G502, which is easily one of the best mice of all time in my opinion. This is the Proteus Spectrum version, so I can set it to match my purple color, but all of the G502s are excellent. This is my favorite mouse I've ever used, and I even keep a second one for travel so I can use it with my laptop. The speakers are Yamaha's HS5 studio monitors, classics, good bang for the buck. They could be better shielded internally, but they sound great, and they're propped up by a combination of Rockville stands and Oralex foam to get them to the right height and to isolate them from the desk. They, as well as my computer, are connected to my Zoom F6, which handles pretty much the entirety of my audio workflow. As I mentioned in the video on the F6, I do my recording, editing, and interfacing using this one device, and it works tremendously well. Check out that video if you want to know more about it. When I'm not using my Yamahas though, I'm using my headphones, which are these Beyerdynamic DT770s. Now headphones are a pretty subjective experience, but for me, there's not a better set of cans at this price point. And then over here, you might not be able to see it, but I've got the ADA Mini switcher for streaming, but this won't be here much longer because I'm just working out the last few kinks in my new streaming setup, which is going to allow me to stream from over in the new main shot area. And so I'm going to be bringing the ADA Mini over there so that I continue to use the different camera angles that I set up, but for live streams. I hope to have the first of those streams up later this week, so make sure you ring the bell so you get notified when I go live so you can see the new stream setup and ask me any questions you might have live. Alright, so lastly, let's talk about the monitors since that's what I've been testing lately and what you've been asking me about. So this one here is the Viewsonic 3481. It's a 34-inch 1440p 21:9 ultra-wide VA panel with 100Hz refresh rate. And over here, I've got the BenQ SW271, which is a 27-inch 4K 16:9 IPS panel with a 60Hz refresh rate. I chose these two monitors after a plethora of research and deal hunting, and I've been trying both of these panels out simultaneously to see which design I like better, and I still haven't decided as I really like both of them. They're both fantastic displays and have very similar features that I appreciate. For instance, they both have great stands with good height adjustment that allow for tilt and swivel, and they both offer a full range of connection options including HDMI, DisplayPort, and USB-C, and they have USB pass-through from your computer, which you can use for connecting peripherals like your mouse and keyboard, and also your color calibration hardware. The BenQ also has an SD card reader, but I only seem to get UHS-1 speeds from it, and as you can see, it comes with a hood for reducing glare and light pollution. It has this really nice velvet interior that does an excellent job of preserving the integrity of the image in mixed lighting. Also, the hood kind of makes this irrelevant, but the BenQ has outstanding viewing angles, some of the best I've ever seen. As you can see from my angle to it here, I'm about 150 degrees off axis, and it looks almost as perfect as if I was straight on. The Viewsonic's angles are quite good too, but the BenQ's are amazing. Both panels also boast a color accuracy with a delta E of less than 2 and come factory calibrated with a nice range of presets including sRGB, Rec 709, and in the case of the BenQ, since it's targeted a little bit more at photographers, it also has an Adobe RGB mode. And it also allows you to rotate to portrait orientation, and you can adapt the hood to work in that mode. The Viewsonic doesn't have Adobe RGB, but does come with a factory calibration report in the box, which is a useful touch. Like I mentioned, both monitors feature a hardware calibration method, so you connect your X-Rite directly to the monitor, and you don't have to monkey around with loading software profiles every time you boot your computer, because they store the correction as a 14-bit 3D LUT into one of the calibration presets on the monitor themselves, so that's awesome. After calibrating, both are quite good for color critical work, but the BenQ is a tad better. It has a wider gamut, allowing for 100% sRGB and 90% Adobe RGB versus only about 80% Adobe RGB on the Viewsonic. And it's also 10-bit, where the Viewsonic is only 8-bit. Now, in terms of practical applications, this doesn't stop me from getting the colors right on either screen, but I do notice more colors and tonality on the BenQ, which in some specific cases might cause me to slightly oversaturate an image corrected on the Viewsonic, but this concern is minor. Now, both monitors claim to be HDR compatible, and they do have a built-in mode for that, but they aren't truly up to spec for that based on the standards. As I said, the Viewsonic is only 8-bit and only has a max brightness of 400 nits, which is far below the 1000 nits requirement. And the BenQ, while 10-bit, only has a peak brightness of 350 nits, so they're pseudo HDR at best, which is no surprise considering the issues with HDR standardization in this industry. But they do allow you to activate the HDR functions within Windows 10, so that's good, I guess. I think the reason why they're able to put HDR on the box is because they can achieve the required contrast levels even though the peak brightness isn't high enough. So those are the similarities and the smaller differences. Beyond that, it really just comes down to aspect ratio and resolution, and there's serious advantages to both. If you're a creative who's also a gamer, I think you'll prefer the Viewsonic. The ultra-wide and higher refresh rate is nice for gaming, and it's only 1440p instead of 4K, so you'll be able to push those frames easier, and it's FreeSync compatible. Also, if you're into shooting anamorphic, it's nice that the screen is very close to the scope ratios you'd be editing in, as it offers 2.33 to 1. I've actually been working on a review for this awesome and affordable anamorphic lens from Sue-Ray, and it's been fun seeing the footage span across the panel. But there are some things that are weirder when using an ultra-wide. Not every app and game supports it, and live streaming and screen capture tutorials are more difficult since I usually present them in 16:9. Alternatively, the BenQ solves that with its 16:9 ratio, but the 4K resolution has presented some problems for me with Windows 10 scaling in DaVinci Resolve. It's not perfectly optimized, and you have to choose between slightly blurry buttons and fonts or giving up timeline real estate. I went the blurry route obviously because more timeline is more important, and it's not terrible, but it's not ideal. This isn't the monitor's fault by any means, but it's something you should be aware for now if you edit with Resolve. The Adobe suite seems fine though, and I didn't have those scaling problems with Resolve on the ultra-wide. Lastly, when it comes to build quality, both displays are good, but the BenQ is a tad more robust when it comes to wobble and has given me no issues, where the Viewsonic did get a stuck pixel within the first week of use, and I've since swapped it out for another on Amazon. Also, I think it's important to remind you that when it comes to purchasing a monitor, it's a good idea to buy them from somewhere that has an excellent return or replacement policy. Amazon is great for this because you don't even have to pay the return shipping, and they swap them out right away if you get dead pixels. I would never buy a monitor from a place with a rigid return policy because you never know when you're going to get unlucky with your panel. All that aside though, I'm not trying to scare you, and neither of these monitors is particularly problematic. In fact, they're both excellent and I recommend them both. They have great colors, terrific features, and no noticeable panel issues like light bleed, etc. It really just comes down to what you need most for the work you're doing. But that's going to be it for me. I hope you found this video entertaining, or at least helpful, and if you did, make sure you leave it the old thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. But if you did not find this video helpful or entertaining, then you probably sat too close to the TV as a kid. Alright, I'm done.